trapezoids, you can put two trapezoids together and come up with a restaurant.
We are on.
Welcome all of you who are here today. We're going to begin this workshop with going through the pledge. If you could join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. To my far right is Clark Schroeder, our administrator. Oh, left, sorry about that. I was too busy with my trapezoids. And then we have Commissioner Huxley, myself, Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Boyce, and Council Huddle, and John Jesuit, our administrative assistant. So, without further ado, does anybody have any agenda amendments that we need to take care of?
Madam Chair, I will have a couple more items to speak at. Agenda number 6, media. I would also like to talk about the special meeting at 1 p.m. and come up with a procedure for that. And I think that's it.
Okay, so we'll call that 6A. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Madam Chair.
I'll second, and just for the record, it's Wednesday, June 13th, 2018.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so we've got a second. Any discussion? Okay, so call for the question.
Aye.
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 So moving on, federal, as required by the Office of Management and Budget, uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards. And Louise Kallstrom, do you want to speak to us about that? And poor Louise is hurting today, so we're going to have to listen awfully hard.
I'll try to yell.
Don't yell. That'll make it worse.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
No, I want to slide that other microphone. Yeah, there you go. They both on?
I don't. Are they on?
Yeah, they are. We can hear you.
Maybe. I think we'll see Charles in a
Here
minute.
comes Charles. So. Okay. Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. So what I have as a workshop in this agenda is to discuss a policy that I'm going to put on the agenda for next week, and that is a policy for the county for federal awards. I'm going to kind of read this. The Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, is a federal office. Their uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards. This used to be called the A133. It is the procedures for auditors to go through when they audit a federal award recipient. And the uniform guidance is a government-wide framework for grants management and is an authoritative set of rules and requirements for federal awards that synthesizes and supersedes guidance from earlier OMB. So this one came through in 2014, and then they wanted everybody to have a policy that was a written standards of conduct, establish various acquisition procedures, and follow certain prescribed procurement methods. And we were originally required to comply with this requirement by December 2014, and where grant recipients were given additional time. The latest extension provides non-federal entities that are grant recipients an additional year, but that was until December 2017. That was put out in May 2017, that we were given an additional year, but really it was only, seems to be 7 months and not a year. So we do need to have a written policy on how we handle federal awards. The documents that you have attached to your agenda show the written policy, and it's basically what we already do. We just have to have it in writing. And then before you also have an order that adopts this policy. So I'm going to do a little handout. It's one of the things that this this new OMB circular is kind of looking at it, and it has to do with the controls over federal monies that we receive. So. So I'm handing this out because basically what this policy is getting at, and what the OMB is kind of emphasizing, is internal controls and how those are set up and monitored and communicated. So one of the things that I have discussed with our treasurer, Debbie Crumley, and I think I said something about it during budget season, is that I have in the past written an internal control document, and I would like to have one for the county that would encompass not only all of the internal controls, but also the federal award internal controls. It's kind of going to be a work. It takes a while to write an internal control document, and that is separate from our financial policies and procedures. It is part of procedures, but it's best to have a separate internal control document. And Debbie and I are going to be working on that during this next year. I'm not sure when I'm going to bring that to you, but it does encompass this this internal controls that this policy and this circular are trying to establish in all of the federal award grant recipients.
Okay, are there any questions? Commissioner Huxley?
On the attachment, the last page, I don't think they're numbered individually, so it would be page 12 of 28 of the packet. The last item, number 12, references a resource. I assume that's the resource for this document?
It is where the actual, if you wanted to look at the OMB circular, that's where you would find it.
Now, question then, so this is not verbatim in this document. This is something that this is a question that you've created from this circular or these circulars?
Yes, it's not, it's it is not as extensive at all of the circular, no. It is kind of a summary and the basic needs that we would have to have in place for a policy.
Okay, there are two things then on, and it's, again, because these pages aren't numbered, I'm going to reference the page numbers of the packet. It's going to be page 8 of 28, and also page 12 of 28. Both of these, go down to page 8. It's going to be number on page 8, it's going to be number 3. or part of number 3. And on page 12, it's going to be subsection F, but both have to do with violations of different things. And what I've seen in the last 3.5 years certainly is so many documents will refer to you can't do this or you shouldn't do this, and if you do, you're in violation. And you'll be subject to so according to some policy, you know. But there's never any specificity to that. And I would sure like to see some specifics. You know, the other one I think had to do with subcontracts, or, you know.
And I'm not sure what page
this one.
number 3 is on, because I don't have any pages to reference, so
Well,
can you tell me this first sentence at the top?
But it's identified as number 3 in the attachment.
Can you tell me what is the
It has to do
sentence
with,
on the top of the page, so I know what page
well,
we're
on the, 3 says conflicts of interest. That's the title for number 3. There's nothing else on the page, you know, farther up on the top.
And number 2
has
is payment of awards.
Number 4 on the same page is audit
requirements.
requirements. That's, I'd just like to see some specific consequences that would be identified if infractions or violations occur.
Well, this one says in accordance with county policies, and I'm not sure what our county policies
Exactly,
are.
or refer specifically to something so we can actually see what are the consequences for violations of rules. In this case, you know, conflicts of interest, but to go to the other one on page 12, and I'll give you what the number there was. It would be,
It's number 9F.
well, it's under, it starts with sub-recipient monitoring on the previous page, and it's, you know, there's A, B, C, D, and this one flows over to the following page. It's number F, and it says take enforcement action on non-compliant sub-recipients.
Well, I think that if we have a sub-recipient, we have a contract with them, and that contract would spell out any actions we take for their non-compliance.
But is that specific enforcement action referenced in these resources that are referenced at the bottom, that you said this is far less than the scope of those?
This would be more of a internal type enforcement action. They're not telling us what our enforcement, the OMB is not telling us what our enforcement actions are. In this one on 9F, a sub-recipient would be somebody who is actually carrying out a federal award, and I think this would kind of apply to the Head Start grant, where we have a sub-recipient type relationship going on. And I would assume that if in that contract that we have for that, it has some kind of non-compliant to federal award type language in it, and I would have to defer to county council if that contract has that in it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what, excuse me.
With your voice?
I'm trying to understand why we're asking her these pretty deep-rooted questions. I mean, this is a standard boilerplate that's written by the federal government, correct?
This actually is, I looked at several versions of this policy. This is the one from Tillamook County. And it encompasses all of the basics that we need in a policy for federal awards.
Council Huddle?
Thank you. So 2 questions have been asked. One was about specifically the conflict of interest section, subsection 3, and it says that violations of the conflict of interest for county public officials be handled per our policies. So in general, we have personnel regs, and those have policies on conflicts of interest in there. and violation of our personnel regs is subject to discipline. And, you know, you can have, we have multiple different disciplines we can impose depending on the circumstance. So when you look at the source documents that Commissioner Huxley's talking about, the, you know, CFRs, whatever they're called, the comments on those were very similar to what Commissioner Huxley said. The comments were like, this requirement to have a conflict of interest section is not very specific, and the response to that comment was, yes, but each federal agency is going to be required to have a conflict of interest policy itself. And so the rules to get this policy in place to satisfy the audit requirement is not to then add a specific penalty for conflict of interest in this policy. It's to say that we will address conflict of interest and that we have a conflict of interest policy, and we do, in a separate document. And to refer to all of our policies. Now, the only other issue with conflicts of interest is that in our personnel regs, those don't apply to elected officials. But elected officials are subject to the conflict of interest rules under state law, which is, it's a de facto county policy that our elected officials are subject to conflict of interest under state law. So those are our two ways to handle conflict of interest, specifically with respect to the conflict of interest. The other one, I'm trying to think what it was, and I agree with what Louise said there, is
12B.
right. No, it's to make sure that that our subrecipients, that we have provisions in the contracts on those, that there will also be a process, internal control designed to achieve objectives of federal award, reporting, evaluating, monitoring, taking prompt action. So this kind of policy is to establish the other elements. As far as giving specifics, I don't have that specific agreement with the Brookings Head Start. I might be able to pull it up to see if it had anything in there about audits and things like that, and I don't know if that's an exact fit here.
And since it's not a federal award, Head Start grant.
Well,
from the
it's a
state.
CDBG. It's a
Okay.
it's a federal program. So, well, let's just, I guess, just I'll talk off the top of my head here, but so administration. Each public official is responsible for ensuring that federal financial assistance is administered in accordance with purpose of federal award agreement in compliance with applicable laws and regulation. Responsibility shall provide efficient, effective administration of the federal award through the application of sound management practices. You know, on the Brookings Head Start, we have worked that program. We did review of the grant. We did review of the deliverables. We looked at that building from top to bottom. We got appraisals. It called out, and the grant itself, and I don't have the Brookings Head Start Grant Award, but it talks about that. I'm having regular meetings with that. And then when you ask what are the responsibilities if we don't do that, that grant, we had a possibility to return the grant or not. I mean, I think these things will happen on such a case-by-case basis. Administer federal funds in a manner consistent with the underlying agreement. So we're also doing that on that grant. Then it's comply with the cost principles established by the federal government, support the accumulation of costs. We're following, you know, for instance, in that one, we're doing procurement per the federal contracting regs and the state contracting regs. So that's handling the costs there. And that, you know, prevailing wage rate is one of the costs. That's what we're doing there. Apply costs and cost allocations related. We have multiple people involved. We have a grant administrator. We have the state. To get payment on that has to go through multiple steps. The next one, ensure no profit results from the use of federal assistance. In the Brookings Head Start, I'll give you an example. Once that building is complete, it will be turned over to the ORCA group, but that is the term of the grant. So it says no profit will be realized unless explicitly authorized in the terms and conditions of the federal award. That was the exact term and condition of that award. So to the extent that even is a profit to that nonprofit group, and again, it's a question, that was explicitly authorized. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much. I don't want to, but I'm trying to show you, how this.
Could I just kind of give you a summary?
Thank you.
So we can.
Yeah, I'd like to
make it
move on,
short.
but I'm trying to make sure we get an answer.
I'm looking
to
at
the
this
question
policy
as
as
much
kind of an overall process that we need to go through for grants, and then we have our specific policies that would determine if there were people who disrespected those policies or went against those, then there would be some sort of a punishment, if you will, if they did that. But I don't think this is
establishing guidelines to administer federal awards.
to a goal. Yeah, right.
To administer them, and
So this is
and
kind of overall umbrella
and
for the
our
whole thing.
own policies and procedures, our finance policies and procedures, our personnel policies would do any consequences. And also one of the consequences is during the audit, if we're not following this policy,
Right.
we will have a written comment on our audit.
But this is kind of an umbrella policy for all federal grants.
Yes.
In
Yes.
other words. Commissioner Huxley?
I'm not going to draw this out either, but I'm going to make one comment in response to some of the examples like of the Brookings Head Start. What we found a year and a half, 2 years later, were that there were contracts that were let that did not comply. There had been no check and balance whatsoever. So it does happen.
Hence, we need something like this.
Well, you need more
And
than
then
this,
follow
but
through.
Follow through.
Well, and what we did in that circumstance was when we discovered that, we changed the personnel administering that grant, and we took corrective measures. So again, it's, we did what we could once we found out what had happened, but stopping in the, changing personnel is, I don't know what else we can do other than that, and taking corrective measures and offering to give the grant money back. So we took steps to comply once we discovered the problems.
Any other questions? Commissioner Boyce?
Here's what we're going to vote on. The 20th, in the matter of adopting policies and procedures over the administration, allowable cost, and subrecipient monitoring of federal awards. That's all we have to vote on. And I want to commend you for taking care of this. This is a good detail. It's important. I don't think we need to spend any more time on it today, Madam Chair. Thank you.
This is a workshop to answer any questions about this policy. This policy will go to the board for adoption on the 20th.
I think taking the time today is trying to save us time in the meeting. So I don't.
Fine.
I want all the commissioners. I mean, certainly
your
each
questions
commissioner
out.
is going to have a different comfort level on how much time we need to take on this.
Any other questions? Did you have a question, Commissioner Huxley? No? No other questions? Okay, so then I think to proceed, we'll just give...
This will be on the agenda next week with this order to approve this policy.
Okay. So, no other comments on that. Okay, next we're moving on to environmental health fees, pass-through revenue from the state of Oregon intended for Curry Community Health, and match funding for public health from marijuana tax. Ken Duquet. Boy,
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Schroeder.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Huddle, staff, and good morning, Carl. He's buried in his phone over there this morning. So I wanted to start with the environmental health fees. It's on the agenda for next week, and hopefully you all have the proposed fee schedule with you. May I? I have one. And essentially what we're asking for is to change just one item on the fee schedule. And that is for just temporary vendors less than 30 days. And I'm quite confident that walking in behind me are Ben Cannon, our public health administrator, and Kent Downs, who is our environmental health coordinator. We had a staff meeting down in Brookings, so we just left there as quickly as we could to come up. So the request is just to change the one on the temporary licenses, and that really comes from the community as more of a request, and not from specifically vendors themselves, but more from people who are putting on events in the community and trying to draw vendors in to offer different food items at some of the different events. Our fees were $215 for an individual to open up a temporary vendor for a particular event, and frankly a lot of vendors were just not willing to pay that. And so what we were finding at some of our local events is one, maybe two food vendors instead of having an offering of many food vendors. And so we believe this is going to be either neutral, revenue neutral or revenue positive, because more people are going to come in. If we only have one or two people asking for that temporary food license at $215 a piece, as opposed to 6 to 8 vendors coming in at $60 a piece, it's certainly going to at least be revenue neutral, if not revenue positive to some small degree. And really our issue is, from a public health perspective, we're more interested in making sure that the public is eating food at a place that's been inspected so that we make sure that it's safe, and then obviously supporting our community by making sure that they have a good offering of different food items at these community events. Ben or Kent, did you want to add anything to that?
Covered it.
Okay. Other than that, we have to be conscientious about our brick and mortar folks that have regular restaurants. What we don't want to do is start lowering all the fees for mobile vendors when our brick and mortar people have substantial fees. That tends to be a complaint that they have, and we need to be respectful of that. I think the only one that we're really in favor of changing is just that event type vendor license, and that will help everybody, I believe, in the community. Yes, sir.
For your single event permit, what's the allowable timeline? 2 days, 1 day, a week?
It's less than 30 days as I understand it, but I'm not real educated on that. Kent, would you like to talk about that, or Ben?
So that single event is up to 30 days.
30 days.
So you can have a 1-day event, you could have, but it needs to be the same location, the same operator, or the same provider of that service. So
Can you apply for concurrent long-running permits that are 30 days consecutive?
you could do a renewal. So let's say that you're going to one event that's 10 days long, and then next month you're doing another event that's only a day or two long. You can apply for another.
Like the farmers market, they're ongoing events, so what would they have to pay?
So something like that would be more suited for the 90-day. So
Okay.
the seasonal license is what we would call that.
3 months?
Yeah, 3-month type thing, and that you're in the same location. The provider is the farmers market. You're working with the same organizer,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to get that for 90 days.
Okay. Any questions about the proposed fees? Looks like a lot of them have gone down here.
There was a reduction back in 2000 and I have to really roll back. 15 and 2014 is when I started with CCH, and in 15 we rolled back all the environmental health fees. Not a considerable amount, but we did roll them back about 10% across the board. And that was one of the complaints from our state licensing folks that came out and did a triennial review on public health, that the environmental health fees were too high. The rollback was based on cost allocation methodology we used in determining what our actual cost of service was. And so by being able to set that fee structure based on our actual cost, it sort of took away the argument. Our problem is we don't live in a metro area. We live in an area that's very spread out, and our inspector could literally be driving 160 miles a day to cover various inspections.
So do you have to inspect all of these small events and
Food, pool, lodging.
okay. So that's where the money goes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
Just you label it temporary restaurant fees. When you look in the county and the different companies we have, sometimes you hear that the fees for any part of Oregon is pretty steep for those. Ben, you might be able to answer this better, but just is there an average that the local restaurants pay, and is there any variance in that?
Actually, I can help answer this, and Ben's
Okay.
more than welcome to jump in.
I mean, I think it's related, but not.
We've talked about these things extensively, and there's a different cost of doing business depending on where you live in Oregon. Those are just the simple facts. I don't think there's an average cost. I think when, liars figure and figures lie. I think when people want to present a particular argument, they might go out and try to shoot an average. But how did you get that average? Are you comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges? If you're comparing us to what they're doing in Washington County, that's not a fair comparison. But if you're comparing us to what they do in Wallowa County, well, we might have something there. We might be fairly similar. We're remote. We don't have I-5 running through our corridor anywhere. We're on 101. I call that geographically isolated. So there's a higher cost of doing business. It's sort of like thinking about things in terms of an RN, a nurse, right? If you hire a nurse over in Eugene, you're going to pay $60,000 a year for that RN. To get that same RN over here on the coast, you're going to pay $85,000 a year. Housing is very difficult to find. There are costs that we have in these smaller communities that you don't find in the metro areas. So again, we're pretty confident about our cost methodology. I don't think it's fair to assess the difference between us just because of the number of our population. We have to take into account what happens when our population increases during tourism season, which causes a major influx in activity, especially for our department in environmental health. So I think our fees are well centered. I will share just on the other side of the coin, as much as we have some folks that are concerned about fees, we have people who have not paid their fees, and we don't have the ability to do enforcement. I can't be Guido. The county has to act in that capacity as the public health authority.
So are you going to give us some money to take care of that?
Out of your fees? You could earn your money by just doing it. And I'll just give you an example. There are 2 restaurants that I know off the top of my head who have not paid their environmental health fees for the last couple of years. And they've done that knowingly because they know there's no enforcement tool. We're talking several $1,000s just for that. It's not that we're paying for something. It's really the county has the public health authority. There are monies that go in the environmental health account that can be used to support that. But the fact is that there's probably $25,000 to $35,000 of revenue that's sitting out there that we can't collect because we don't have the enforcement authority. Just giving you 2 examples of 2 restaurants where they're knowingly not paying their fees, and we can't do anything about that.
Can you name names?
No, that would not be fair.
Don't do it.
I
Don't
know
go
you
there.
want me to do that, but no.
I'm not saying the fees are too high. I've just, I wasn't trying to drag you into a conversation and comparing to other states. And your point about being in a rural area, which kind of adds to or compounds to our difficulty in helping people stay in business here. But just for the benefit of the public that may not know, tell us what those fees go for. I mean, I've been through restaurant inspections, and it's really good what the environmental health people do in just simple compliance with the benefit of the public. So I wonder, I would guess that the majority of the public doesn't know why that's important.
Why those fees are important?
Well, no, what you do, well, that too, but I mean, what you do in your inspections. I mean,
Sure.
temperatures, refrigerators, and counter cleanliness, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that goes into these inspections and ensuring that the public is safe. And, Kent works in much more of it's almost a relationship type role with these vendors and the people. He's there for help and support. So it's not just that he's going in and doing an inspection once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, however many the license requires, but they give him a call and they say, hey, I'm having this problem, I'm working through this thing, I got some new piece of equipment and it's not quite working right, and Kent will walk them through what the rules are that they need to follow in order to make sure that piece of equipment is keeping things hot to the right temperature or keeping things cold to the right temperature. And so he really works in a collaborative role with all of these restaurant vendors. So there's a lot of education that goes into the work that he does. And there's also, like I said, there is a huge amount of regulation that is required for him to understand and implement and help restaurant owners to comply with those regulations.
I have a quick question. The restaurants that are not paying their fees, are they being inspected?
They are.
Oh, yes.
So, question, you have no teeth in order to...
Well, as Ken mentioned, that's something as the county that we have that opportunity to enforce that and work with the restaurant owners to collect those fees.
Interesting. Council Huddle.
Well, thanks, right. And so the interesting part is we pay 25% of in-canon salary, I think, and we are the governance, so we, one of the things of governance is enforcement, but this is the first I've heard of this lack of payment of these fees. So, I mean, if someone, to think that we're not doing this, or it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that we're not doing it, because how could we know about it? They haven't. I mean, have you shared this information with anyone in the county before, Mr. Duque? Who?
Yes, for the last several years.
Who?
I've said at several meetings that I have to act like Guido. I would go out with the various inspectors, not with Kent, but our previous inspector, and I would sort of strong-arm people into paying, but without any teeth to do that. I have no legal action to support what I'm doing. I'm just really sort of bending them.
So would you want us to send the sheriff out there to take care of this matter, or?
I think that's a great question. I don't think it falls under that. It's sort of getting back to that argument about the county having their own code enforcement officer. And I've been, in the beginning, I offered to help fund a portion of that, but nothing happened. And I'm not placing that blame on anyone. I'm just saying just nothing happened. And we're at that stage where it'd be a helpful scenario to have.
So when we're talking code enforcement, we not only mean those properties that are amiss, but we also mean restaurants that are not paying their fees, and it seems to me like that would be low-hanging fruit there.
And then the other side of that equation, Commissioner, which is not just about them paying their fees, but if we needed to go through the process of closing down a restaurant, the county needs to be engaged in that, because there are a series of hearings and there are some administrative rules that need to be followed in that process. And again, we can't actively pursue that without some support. I understand what Council Huddle was saying about the county paying 25% of Ben's salary. While that's true, it's not entirely true. Those fees come from environmental health. There are no general fund monies that fund Mr. Cannon or fund public health. It's all fees generated from the environmental health that go into an account that pay for that.
Commissioner Huxley?
Well, to Ken's comments, as far as there have been discussions, I've had some discussions with him, and that had to do with code enforcement. My understanding, and this is not trying to skate anything, but my understanding that has been put forth at some of these meetings was that there was approximately, and conditioned on if the county was able to implement a code enforcement policy, hire a code enforcement officer, full-time or part-time, that it was very restricted on the funds that could be used, that we would have available. It wasn't a transfer or anything. I believe the number was $30,000. We've talked about this many times in budget hearings, but it would be conditioned on the county being able to use that for code enforcement of environmental type issues specifically, not nuisance issues, not other things. In addition to the 30, there was a commitment, again, dependent on if a code enforcement happened, of $10,000 from Curry Community Health. Conversations that I had specifically with you, of $10,000 general fund that could be used for any type of code enforcement. Now I'm going to plead, well, I'm not going to plead, but I was not aware that of the restaurants that you go into that were not paying. This is the first time that has come up.
My first time too.
To my knowledge in any of our conversations. It was more, to do with code enforcement. I understood that completely. the funding was there if ABC, was to take place, but I was not aware that, certainly not of the approximate dollars you've mentioned, be it 10,000, I think you said 20 or 30 or 35,000 may be the total, amount on some of that non-compliance that's known, much of which is known. I was not aware that it was working that way or that was occurring, but we can certainly take that knowledge now and work toward a positive outcome, I think.
Mine's a two-part question. First part, how far back can we go back in collecting these fees? I mean, is there a statute of limitations, kind of like the taxes, or?
Well, I think realistically, it's probably going to get into some sort of negotiation with those individual people unless we wanted to go to a full-blown hearing. The county could probably safely enforce 2 to 3 years out without too much of a hardship on that, because we have evidence of inspections and work that was done. And so, payment would be expected, or then we would move in the direction of actually taking their license, which is a whole process, again, that would involve hearings and following the administrative rules.
So when those monies are collected, they go back to where?
Into that environmental health pot. But again, it's
that
like...
could be used for code enforcement.
Right, so if the code enforcement officer is just ticking down the time they spend in each one of those activities, any activity time that they spent in environmental health would be paid for from that environmental health fund. Any activities likewise that they spent in another division working on that would probably come from that division or come from the general fund.
And when we talked about the public health budget hearing, the question was asked, well, why did you budget more revenue? And that, my response was that it's in anticipation of increased collection. By utilizing that code enforcement officer, we will be able to collect these types of fees.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
I was aware of some of the resistance, and I know some of the operators, and I think the way you just described and defined your roles and the relationships that you're building with the restaurants, I think that's the best way to collect those fees. People hear enforcement, and that would ultimately be subjected to that path, but I think with the relationships you're building, trying to understand their issues and yet help them comply and keep working with them, and I know that takes extra time, and the travel back and forth as you mentioned, but I think that's the approach that's going to kind of get them swung over to our side, and I think we can help, at least be available if that can make a difference for you and your people. Yeah.
You bring up a really good point, and that is that it's really important for myself and for Kent to maintain that relationship, and we want to work and be collaborative with these people, because their success is our community's success, not only financially, but from a health standpoint of view.
Great.
And if Kent is having to go out there, or myself, and we're trying to pound the cash register, it doesn't put us in a good position to be collaborative with them. We really want to provide a quality service and be collaborative in our approach.
We'll bring them. We'll help bring them to the checkbook and get it sent this way. And then you remember when we were younger, the worst thing you could have on your door was a B from the inspections. I mean, I'm going back 40 years now. If you had an A, you displayed it on your front door proudly. Otherwise, you had a B rating, and if a C, you couldn't open up. Is that?
We don't do the grades anymore.
Thank God you don't.
we still do have stickers that people can put on their doors to say that they've complied with the inspection and that they're a safe establishment.
But I'm saying, as a kid, you walked into a restaurant and had that yellow B in your front door. You're going, oh,
So how many years have these restaurants been non-compliant in paying their fees?
I don't think we can answer that. Yeah. I think that we know of a couple, and again, we're not going to name names, but it's people that should be paying their fees because they're doing good business, but they just know that there's no enforcement arm, and that's sort of like throwing it back in the face of everybody else.
Well, it's not fair to the other restaurateurs that are paying their fees. Not right.
Just to let you know, from a budgetary standpoint, the county had planned on having a full-time code enforcement officer, which would have duties split amongst the various departments that have these complaints and these issues. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the budget committee cut it down to a half-time position. And I think I asked staff at our staff meeting yesterday because there were some differences. It was budgeted at a half-time position. Is that, Louise, could you correct me if I'm wrong?
Originally.
Louise Colstrom, County Accountant. The original proposed budget was for a half person.
Okay.
Then there was a proposal on Monday, the 21st, to change around in economic development, building planning, which would have that configuration that was proposed on that day would have had a full-time code enforcement officer. But the budget committee approved the original proposed budget, which was a half-time code enforcement officer.
Thank you for the explanation.
So we could probably have another workshop just on this subject matter, just trying to get to a little bit of closure on fees. If, you know, I pulled the $10,000 in funding because it wasn't going anywhere. But if the county gets serious about doing a full-time person, CCH will recommit $10,000 to be paid in $2,500 a quarter installments, as long as a full-time person is hired. We'll do it for 1 year. I'm not going to commit beyond that, and we'll just write that check to the county, general fund. It's not going to go in the environmental health fund, but the county needs it. I live out in the county. I live just south of Port Orford, and I could name off numerous instances where an ordinance or a compliance person would come in handy. So I'd like to move off that subject. And
Commissioner Boyce?
Quickly, and thank you, but the $10,000 for 1 year commitment, that's part of the trouble that we're having in the inconsistency of getting that full-time person to come here. So I'm going to just respectfully, privately, maybe not so privately, lobby you for maybe 2 years on that if you can, and that would maybe help us in that package that could get us over the threshold of getting that position filled. It's tough, as you know.
well, I'm not from Missouri, which is the show me state, right? I'm from Minnesota originally, and so I want to see something before I commit beyond that. We've been talking about code enforcement for 4 years. So
that is a nice gesture that you just offered.
I put it back on the table. I think we need it. I'm willing to invest in it, what little we can. We're not a rich organization, but I believe it's a really important cause, and especially on the environmental health side. You know, public health's responsibility is to keep the public as healthy as we can. We want them to eat at clean restaurants. We want them to swim in clean swimming pools. Sorry about that. And we want them to be able to lodge at places that are clean. That's what we do. Well, that's what they do.
No
Not
further
necessarily.
comments. Okay. So you were going to talk about marijuana tax revenue also.
Well, there were two items on there. There's the pass-through revenue from the state of Oregon intended for Curry Community Health. So just as sort of going back about 6 months in time here, there used to be a three-party contract with Oregon Health Authority, Curry County, and Curry Community Health, in that all three of us participated in signing contracts for the financing of public health. Back in 2017, the state said, we don't want to do that anymore, we just want to contract with the counties. So what we did is we came up with a separate contract, separating from the old transfer agreement we had when we separated in 2013, and those contracts were signed in December, if I recall correctly. We have not been getting our payments in a timely fashion. And I want to just share with the Board of Commissioners that we expend funds on services and we're reimbursed. And so when our payments come in slow, it sort of bogs down our system a little bit and puts us into cash flow crises where I have to think about pulling money out of our reserve in order to balance out our checkbook. Because again, we're not like the county that has a big road fund as a backup. We just have a small reserve. And we just need to get those payments as timely as possible. And one particular payment, we were out 42 days before we got the payment.
And the
that's-
county had received that payment?
Yes.
Okay. And who's responsible for making sure you get the payments in a timely manner? Would that be their treasurer? I don't know.
I know that my staff talk with staff here, and my goal is not to point fingers. My goal is to talk about, look, we pay our bills on a regular basis. We try to make sure that we get all those done. We provide a service, and we need to get reimbursed in a reasonable fashion. And our contract calls, by the way, we didn't get the right contract signed. This contract says a 5-day, but it's supposed to be a 10-day time frame from when the county actually receives the payment from OHA and when that's sent over to Curry Community Health.
Yeah, I'm just not privy to how it comes in and how it goes out. But I agree with you. You need to get your money in a timely fashion. And if I were in your position, I would say the same thing.
So the second part of the pass-through dollars is, it was probably about 6 weeks ago, and I might be a little bit off on my time frame. I did talk with staff from the county about some funds that were received by the county. And in my original conversation that I had with those folks, I was told that they were community mental health program funds. And my response was, if they're community mental health program funds, then they need to come to us. Later in that same conversation, it was disclosed that they weren't really necessarily community mental health program funds, and I sort of let it go. Then I had a meeting with some of the county partners, so the juvenile department and sheriff's office, about these funds, and they kept calling them mental health funds, and I said, wait a minute, I was told they weren't community mental health program funds. So there's a check that came in for $56,000 to $58,000. I don't know the exact amount. The county's had it for quite some time, but nobody really knows a tight time frame on that. And again, I'm not interested in pointing fingers. What I'm interested in saying is, if funds come to the county pursuant to our contracts and they're intended for the community mental health program, there's no other way to identify the community mental health program than by statute. And those are the services we provide. They're not services that other people provide. We are the only ones certified as a CMHP. We have the people with master's degrees, licensed professional counselors, and all the stuff that makes up a CHMP.
So were those part of the medical marijuana funds that came in? I know part of that is specific to the mental health. I have that.
Well, I'm sure your staff and you folks will talk about it. I'm just at the stage where it's, we had a good conversation about it, and then I met with our partners about it, and now I'm a little concerned about where those funds are and who they're intended for. And my concern about that is that, if they're intended for community mental health, then that's where they should go. There are not other divisions that do the services we do. There was discussion about how, people with mental health illness may end up at the jail, but my response to that is they don't pay for the beds, we do. And when we pay for a bed, it's $30,000 to $60,000 a month that comes out of Curry Community Health. Certainly we get money from OHA to pay for that. Our most expensive placements tend to be the kids. And it's not just for mental health, it's also for addictions. We pay for all those. So my point being, if there's pass-through funds, we need to make sure that those pass-through funds are coming through, or at least let's engage in a conversation about what those funds are so we can be clear about it. I'm not real clear. I got really confused. I was told first they were, then they're not, now I'm hearing they are again. And
so how
I don't
about
want to
this?
debate.
We direct our administrator to take care of this issue.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, we're good.
I want to be
Commissioner
involved in
Boyce?
those conversations as far as where that money goes and how specific it is to a specific law, and especially with the Oregon Health Authority, because there's a lot going on where they may give up their enforcement or licensing to the OLCC. So there's a lot going on in this issue, and it is continually changing. So I want to be involved in that conversation. I think I can help. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And as you know, I have a strong background in health and human services, so we should set up a meeting, the two of us, to have a discussion to get up to speed for how the organizations work together.
Sounds great.
Commissioner Boyce, you're also on the board of CCH, aren't you?
Wouldn't matter, would it?
I'm just trying to...
Yes, I am.
So I think you'd be presented with the information I mean, what I'm hearing is there's a staff workup level. Yeah, there's no prohibition on you being involved. I don't know that you have a conflict of interest, but what we're talking about is staff work, but you're
Good.
wanting to be involved in doing staff work. I guess you can be in the room. It wouldn't be a quorum. There wouldn't be any public meeting violation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Did we help you on that issue?
My biggest issue is making sure that I'm talking with commissioners about it. I'm at that stage and talking to the county administrator that I think we need to resolve it. If those funds have been, I've heard anywhere from 6 to 9 months, those funds have been with the county. And we have some history with that. We had some beer and wine tax revenue that was intended for community mental health that was held for 8 months previously. And so my concern is we have an organization to run. We're not some big rich organization that sits on millions of dollars.
No,
You
I
know,
totally understand
we
where you're
need to
coming
run
from, and I think we can
Exactly.
take care of your issue. Commissioner Huxley?
You know, and this would be a request also, rather than just assume that it would be done, okay, but that the Administrator Schroeder will interface. I feel comfortable that get it resolved, you know, to your satisfaction, but that we will get, the board would still get an update, not with every detail, but a pretty, you know, specific
I'll provide a
update,
summary on my findings.
you know, to back as far as what was found and what was done to resolve the situation.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
And that will also help us for the future so that you don't have to deal with this on a, you know, annual basis or biannual basis, I would assume, unless there's other changes that may be coming. But other than that, I think we'd be set up pretty well for the future, too.
I'm completely pleased if it's handled at an administrative level. My goal is not to rock the boat. My goal is just to get
Get your
things where
money.
they belong. You know, and if it's not mine, it's not mine. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh,
So the last item was talking about some match funding for public health from potentially the marijuana tax revenue. So just, you know, let me share. In 2013, when Curry Community Health was formed as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, that was intended to roll out the public health, the mental health, and the addiction services from the county to help with some of the revenue issues they were having and costs. And so public health has cost, even when it was with the county, several $100,000 a year it ran in the red. This year, it's $240,000 in the red. Next year, it's going to run at $260,000 in the red. We pay for that through some of the other services we do, like our primary care clinic and some of the other things that are not mental health related. That's not sustainable long term. So the state of Oregon is talking about doing match funding in 2019 to 21 biennium. And their essential instrument on it now is basically saying that if a county were to make a donation to its public health, and it doesn't matter if public health is part of the county or not, that the state would be interested in matching those funds up to a certain amount. So my suggestion is, and we would want to get that on the books before 2019, because if you wait until 2019, then you got to prove that out over a year before you would be eligible for those match funds from the state. So my request is if the county put up $60,000, I would put up another $60,000 from our organization for a total of $120,000, which the state would match that $120,000 for a total of $240,000, making public health actually break even. And remember, public health is really one of those cornerstone programs that I think that a lot of folks don't know about. We have our WIC program. We have one of the most successful WIC programs in the state. Soon everybody in their mailbox will be getting a card that talks about those scores and all the people that we reach in our county. And that's the Women, Infants, and Children program. And that's a very important part of what we do. We do immunizations, another very important part of what we do. We handle the school exclusions, making sure that the kids who are going to school have the right immunizations so that other kids are not exposed to risk in the school. We provide immunizations for people that are traveling out of the area. We provide immunizations for the flu, for the pneumonia. We have a wide array of those immunizations that are an important part of what we do in the public health sector. And I think now that public health has been away from the county for so long, we've kind of lost that identity with all the things that public health actually does. And while I understand that we are a cash-strapped county, and I certainly get that, the county's not made a single investment into public health, mental health, or addictions since 2013, not a penny. We're asking now, 5 years later, to partner for the county to partner with us by taking some of that marijuana tax revenue, potentially, and applying 60,000 of that, which will match, to get the state to match the other 120 to get public health to break even. This will probably be a long-term discussion. This isn't anything you'll see on the agenda anytime soon. It's just, I think it's timely because the first marijuana tax revenue payment came in, and if you, now I follow it, that was a low payment because the state retained some of those funds. Future payments, quarterly payments, not annual payments, quarterly payments are expected to be higher. And so what is the potential funding to Curry County? I guess we won't know till the end of the year, but it sort of sounds like quite a bit of money. And so if we were able to take some of those funds and apply them towards public health, I think that would be a great addition for our community. Actually taking those funds and putting them from marijuana tax revenue and putting them back to work for our public.
So I'm looking at the marijuana thing, and California's just okayed marijuana to be recreational and so forth. So do you see some of the taxes, especially in this area, or the sales of marijuana going down as a result of that?
Sort of, I don't. I see people will continue to use at the rate that they use. Obviously, from our prevention cycle, we're trying to teach people not to do that at the younger ages, and maybe that'll have an influence over time. But it's sort of looking at the other things that we know in history have not been good things, like tobacco and alcohol. And, has that changed? The state has, alcohol stores and very expensive liquor if you go in and buy it from the state alcohol stores. That doesn't stop people from going in and buying it. I think that marijuana, especially recreational marijuana, is one of those things that people do as a choice. I don't anticipate that because California opened up that it would change where we're at. It's, did it change Washington, the state of Washington, and the state of Colorado? They legalized that recreationally before the state of Oregon did, and it hasn't had any impact on them. I'm not expecting that it'll be the same down there. I don't think there will be a change. I think it's just a matter of recognizing what those revenues are, and I think it's a good 2 or 3 years before the county's really comfortable going, this is probably what we're going to get every year. I think the first year's sort of a crapshoot. We don't know what it's going to be.
Mr. Boyce?
I just heard you say the other states were not affected by the growth in the especially in the recreational end of the marijuana. There's some news and statistics out there. Maybe that's not what you're specifically referencing, but
I'm talking about the purchase of recreational marijuana does not seem to be declining as more states add it as recreationally approved. There are many other issues.
Yes.
Where the grows are, how close to the cities they are, there's all kinds of things associated with that are problematic.
Thank you.
We're not going there with that. We're just talking money.
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yeah, and specifically the tax revenue.
Commissioner Huxley?
Well, on the tax revenue, and I guess it's a question for Louise Kallstrom, but is the county just setting aside and not doing anything with that tax revenue or that anticipated tax revenue for a myriad of reasons, including the possibility of the federal government coming back and saying that you're going to return all those revenues in the future because we've made other decisions that we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years. Am I correct in that, or am I not correct?
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. I have not been directed to seclude that money yet. It is in the budget right now in the general fund. If I was to put that in some kind of asset account where it couldn't be touched, or put it into a different fund where it couldn't be touched, I have not been directed to do such things yet. So right now, as it's coming in, it is being spent in the general fund.
Yeah, and if we were to segregate that money, we'd have to cut the budget somewhere else if we segregate that money to that. So we're actually budgeting that money and using that money,
Yeah, so-
anticipating that it'll be fully compliant and legal.
Well, I'd understood also that the amount was unknown, and, you know, that's a big, dark
It's not-
secret that we can't...
It's not unknown.
Okay.
It is known what we budgeted, but it is, until July 1st, it has to be included with other funds so that it isn't picked out as a state law of how much you can reveal about the revenues that you receive from it, because it might give information about individual entities. So right now, we have to, it's in miscellaneous and mixed in with other funds, so it's not apparent how much is marijuana tax money. I believe that there's something being signed by the governor that would take effect on July 1st that would take away that ruling, and then we could actually have that as a separate line item.
Any other questions? Commissioner Boyce?
I think the chances, according to the Attorney General that's oversees Oregon, I think the chances of that being suddenly returned, very, very unlikely, based on some fairly deliberate moves that the state of Oregon is making to remedy the issues between the states and the federal government.
Okay. Any other comments, Mr. Duque?
I appreciate your time this morning. I'm sorry we probably went a little bit over what we expected.
6 minutes.
Please feel free to contact me if you have any additional questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next we've got insurance renewal with Able Insurance. So I think we've got Wendy here today.
And Amy.
Wendy and Amy. Okay.
Yeah, Wendy with Able Insurance and Amy Timmies with Able Insurance.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you.
Is this-
We thought we could streamline it for you.
Thank
like
you.
as we say, just
Thank
like
you.
workers' comp.
Louise might want one.
So I'm Amy Timmius with Able Insurance, and my news is all good news, so that's really good. On the right side of your packet, it just goes over the payroll that's associated with the different class codes. We kept all the payroll the same for this year, and the good news is that your experience modification, which is basically the discount that you get on your premium, is going from 0.79% to 0.66%, so resulting in your bottom line premium for 18-19 being $61,779 versus what it was last year at $79,047. So significant savings there.
I have a question, Amy, sorry. So these are, the documents you're referring to are also in the packet, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm getting a
Yes.
affirmation there. I think what she was talking about in your packet materials is on page 22 and 23, but the reason I'm saying all this is because, you know, these meetings are broadcast, people can have our packets, but we don't have them up on the screen. But I just want to make sure people could follow along in case anybody's watching.
Okay,
or looking
thank you.
later.
Good.
Sorry about the interruption. Go
Oh,
ahead.
that's okay. So there's not really much to discuss other than the fact that you guys, you know, are doing really great. Does anybody have questions?
No?
So I'm going to hand it over to Wendy, who's going to go over the property and liability.
So on the property and liability, we do have, County Council, we do have a new handout then.
Ah,
My
thank
apologies,
you.
then we do.
That's okay.
On the right hand, because I tried to condense it, the other is going to be, you know, would be
Thank
what they
you.
would actually vote on at the meeting, but for helping for an understanding, on the right hand side, I did a condensing
Thank
of
you.
the numbers for you.
All right.
So on your right-hand side, I have done a condensing, breaking it with the liability coverage, which is the bulk of the compensation. and then followed it with the other lines of coverage, and then your third page will be the combination of both of those. So starting on page 1, you'll see our current fiscal year, the 17-18 fiscal year, and what those figures were for the liability. And then on the 18-19, you'll see going into the next fiscal year, if we stay with the same plan option, how that would impact it. So your base premium is made up from your liability standpoint is both your general liability and also your auto liability. And within your general liability, that's including your professional liability. It's everything within a public entity liability standpoint. And you have your auto liability built into that. So that would be where in our current fiscal year, the rating basis that we had to start with was 91 vehicles. And on the 18-19 year, the rating basis to start with is 105 vehicles. Your increase in your base premium is also attributed to a change in the jails. There's been significant overall in all of Oregon, not just with Curry County, but all of Oregon has had significant jail claims, jail deaths.
And it looks like that's about a 20% increase.
And that is exactly where that's coming from. They took a significant increase in the jail claims from that rate that they're charging on those. And so that's what's making up the bulk of the increase in our liability costs there. So then our premium credit we get is then from a retro plan. Being on that retro where we pay a minimum amount, and then with that when we have claims we're paying back in. So our retro premium was for our current fiscal year is $83,625, and then because our premium is higher and we're getting that 40% discount, it goes to $99,821 for the next fiscal year. The multi-line credit, because we have more than just liability coverage, we have liability and property coverage with CIS. That's the property credit. And then the high risk is when we do the county events, the fair, we have some motocross, and so that's considered a high risk. So that's a very minimal $1,000 charge for that. So our overall liability premium there at the $145,115.47, up from the $121,3078. And I will show you when we get to the last page how we still in this year have saved over the last year when we made the change on that one from where we're at. So on page 2, we'll see the additional lines of coverage. Up at the top is our current fiscal year. Down below is the projected fiscal year. In this case, we actually have a decrease in the cost there. So we have the TIV stands for your total insured value. So taking a look at all of the county property and it being trended by the 2%. So we haven't had a change in adding, but we did have some appraisals that were done by CIS to adjust them, and then the overall trending of 2%. So that has increased to the $39,625.27. And then we purchased some extra cyber coverage over the amount, the $50,000 that's automatically included from CIS and the property. Same thing on the crime. Any questions on those? It should. It was just pointed out to me a correction on the 2018-2019 for your excess crime. We purchased an excess $500,000. There is $50,000 that is automatically given in the property coverage, so it should be $550,000, the same as our current fiscal year of 17-18. Thank you for catching that.
What is the excess crime coverage again?
So the excess crime coverage, instead of us having to go buy bonds on elected officials or different positions, or for individuals that are overseeing the money, including like the faithful performance, that's all included within the coverage of the blanket crime coverage for your employee theft, dishonesty, from that standpoint.
Okay.
And it includes, it's endorsed in, so your normal crime policy does not include faithful performance. But the public entity one that they've endorsed includes that, so it satisfies that ORS requirement for anybody that would be needing a bond.
So we're not individually bonding individual people, we're just bonding everybody?
Correct.
Got it.
Then the last page is that premium comparison, tying all of those first two pages together with your liability premium, the other premium, which is your property, the excess cyber, the excess crime, then the risk management credit that is given, that then we use that money to going back towards paying the consulting fee that we're charged, and then it shows you your bottom line total. So down at the bottom, we show you that with our liability credit minus the claims paid out for the fiscal year means that the county has saved over $70,000 in this fiscal year by changing plans that we recommended this last year.
What's the risk management credit? How is that determined?
Risk management credit you get from CIS. It's a percentage, and you get that for having an agent versus being direct with CIS. So if you were direct with CIS and did not have an agent to discuss with, to go through and make recommendations, to make plan options, to review things for you, then you would not get that credit, and you would be working directly with CIS, which they do allow.
Okay.
Then on the left-hand side, and again, this was not in the packet there, but it's just your certificate, your highlight of everything that is in the packet that you have of your coverages. We'll show you your liability coverage, so that's showing you your commercial general liability, your public officials liability, your employment practices with the $5 million per occurrence and a $15 million aggregate. Then the auto liability is also at the $5 million, but you will notice that there's no aggregate limit, so there's not a max within a policy year of how many claims. Not that we want to have claims, but there's not a max saying that it's going to quit paying out coverage if you exceeded the limits there. Then the county self-insures the physical damage, so we do not have physical damage coverage on any of the vehicles. Property coverage we have, and we talked about what the total insured values were on that handout. Boiler and machinery or equipment breakdown coverage also included. Our excess crime coverage, and then the cyber liability. Any questions on any of that?
Will you be looking for county board approval on this at the 20th so we can get this
That is
signed
correct.
and effective for
July
the
1st.
first July 1st? Got it. Okay.
Commissioner Huxley?
Your comment early on as far as approximately the 20% increase was attributed to primarily what again?
Jail. It's jail exposure, because they've had jail claims, the death claims, so they raised the rate that they charge per bed.
So CIS is a pool, and they're
Right.
statewide. There were some
Okay, but this was
larger-
statewide though.
Yeah.
Statewide they did it, yes. So it's not tied specifically. We get the repercussions of it statewide because of that. And so they take a look at the amount of jail beds that we have, and they have a rate that they charge per jail bed, and that rate has gone up.
And then, you know, we also have some pending claims. And so, you know, we'd be covered by that as well.
Any other questions? Okay, this is good. We're getting our questions out now so we can put it on the consent agenda, right?
That's my intent.
Okay, sounds good. Louise?
Just because she mentioned it, Louise Colstrom, county accountant, just because she mentioned it, we don't have any physical coverage on our automobiles because we have our self-insurance fund for that, for the physical damage on our vehicles.
Right.
Just to remind you.
Okay.
Does that include these the road fund vehicles, which can be very expensive?
The road fund has its own self-insurance fund, and our general equipment has its own self-insurance fund.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Media spokesperson.
So as I go through getting used to the job here, there'll be some policies that I want to recommend. And before I develop policies, I want to make sure that you want a policy. I don't want to spend energy and research time to do this. A very simple policy that I kind of just saw recently was something where you'd have an official spokesperson for the employees of the county. So in this case, if you had a media contact, if you had an inquiry, basically the employees would say, well, the county administrator is the spokesperson for the press for the county. at the employee level. Obviously, it would not apply toward the elected officials or county board members. And then I would basically coordinate these responses to make sure that, one, we're not getting shopped out for a reporter calling multiple people, and they basically would just work through me, and I obviously, since I don't know everything, I would work with the staff to be informed upon and answering those questions, and that would just be a general policy that, and it would help with employees who maybe are uncomfortable answering questions to a press or somebody else, and say, our policy is we work through the administrator, and then I would work with the staff.
Council Huddle?
And if I could, what Administrator Schroeder's suggesting is consistent with the ordinance that created the position he's filling, which is one of the duties is performing community relation functions, include internal publications, external communications, media liaison, community organization liaison, advisory committee liaison, etc. So it just seems like that's consistent with that. And now, are you proposing that you would be also the spokesperson for the Board of Commissioners collectively or individually, or how would it morph into that, do you think?
Well, I haven't really given that too much consideration. I think I've developed that into the policy. As elected officials, obviously, they can say whatever they want. Mm-hmm. If we're speaking at a policy level where a decision has been made on behalf of the county board or on behalf of the county, I would speak in support of that policy that was decided and directed, and I would carry that out. So I don't know if you'd put that in the policy or not, John. We'd have to take, this is just one of those things where we raise here saying, are you interested in developing policy? If so, we would develop something and bring it back for you guys and make sure that you're on board with this particular direction.
Mr. Boyce?
Well, I've only been here a year and a half, but it's not like our phones ring off the hook from media. At the most once every other month. So considering that's what makes people nervous about a county administrator or a city administrator, if it's perceived, real or perceived, that they take control, they take charge, and sometimes that because they're not elected, they don't have to be accountable. And so I want to make it clear that I'll speak for myself, of course. I think your intent is probably fine, good, but it's interesting to me that since you've only been here a little while, that becomes an issue, and so I'd rather take a kind of a stand back and just see if there really is a need to specifically designate you as that spokesperson. If it goes in within the regs or the statutes or the intent behind the deal, maybe I'll change my mind over time, but I don't see it as a priority right now. I want to give you a chance to go the direction you're going, and I give you private and public compliments, and I'm happy with that. But since you've only been here 10 days, I'm saying, let's let this go for a while. That would be my opinion.
Louise?
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. I think it's on this because I did have a call from the press asking me about a situation, and I did respond to it, but the county administrator also had the same contact and was asked the same questions, and it becomes a...
And Richard.
And yeah, there was 3 of us that were individually contacted about the same questions. And I think to coordinate our answers is better than each one saying their own viewpoint of it. I am used to working with the administrator being the spokesperson for the county, and being here for the past 2 years has been a little unusual for me to have direct contact with a reporter without going through my administrator first. So I think it's more common that the administrator is the spokesperson, and then if that person passes that reporter directly to a department head, then that's when we speak with them. But not without knowing that the administrator is aware of the questions. And I think that having somebody that knows all contacts with the county instead of somebody contacting me, and if I didn't tell him, he would read it in the paper. He wouldn't even know.
I think Commissioner Huxley.
Well, I'll let county council. go
County
first, and then
council?
I'll
Well, I
comment.
don't know if I'm going way off track here, but when you talk about media relations, are we going to get into the topic of staff use of social media to profess a county point of view, or is this?
This initial policy is just a little one paragraph thing.
Okay.
Social media policy is a
Okay, thank
overall enveloping issue which will take months and months and months to do.
Sure. Well, okay, good. Well, I don't. Anyway, that's.
Did you have a comment, Commissioner Huxley?
Yes. I support this, but I would even suggest going further, because my experience and has been that the local, one of the larger local media has a long-standing biased misrepresentation history of inaccuracies in news articles. I've heard it from well, not everyone. I've heard comments from the accountant. I've heard many comments from county council. I have almost a book of comments, that also in this, you can certainly include, I do not typically respond to the one media company that I'm talking about, although I have to Western Communications Inc., who owns this affiliate, and I've also responded to 17 of the major, because it has been so outrageous, 17 of the major news publications in Oregon, and received feedback from many of those. That we also include inaccuracies. There is nary a article that I might read or be provided by somebody that I see as accurate, that does not have glaring misrepresentations and inaccuracies. And I hear, comments, well, it was wrong, it was false, but nobody follows through to let this institution or this organization know that. They have a policy that they don't follow, but it's a published policy that they take these inaccuracies and seriously, and they will correct them. I have a book of ones that they have not corrected, literally a book. But I think this is important, that this feedback, because it has been so pervasive as far as inaccuracies, that this also, if you're misquoted or county council's misquoted, or I'm misquoted, that this feedback get back to this organization that we deserve better. Okay, and that's my opinion.
Let me just
Yep.
speak for just a minute. I think it's important that we get factual information out there, and if we have one person that's representing all, then we have one person to blame instead of everybody.
Yeah. So I would encourage, I don't want to beat this to death because we don't have a policy. I hear that you guys would entertain a policy. I would encourage you, if you have thoughts concerning this, to individually reach out to me and talk about it. I will work with staff and we'll develop a policy for your review, which obviously you guys will edit if you so like and adopt in the future. I don't anticipate this to be very in-depth. We're talking a one-page just saying, here's the thing. And I'm looking at it just to help also staff. I've been in positions in other organizations where staff want to be able to say, I can't comment because it has to go through here. This will help.
I think it would help the staff.
This will help the staff,
tremendously.
and you'll just get a better overall consistent message out of this organization. So
You don't have the infighting and that
you're
kind of
not
thing
shop,
going
you're not
on.
asking mom, asking dad.
Right. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kallstrom, is that the first call you had from media, or is it general? And then I have one other follow-up.
Over the past 2 years, no, it's certainly not the first call.
Okay. And you've been uncomfortable handling those questions, or?
I am not uncomfortable handling finance questions, but I know in my previous organizations, there are a lot of people who did not want to talk directly to the press, and they preferred to have somebody that was the main person to ask and only had to talk to them if it was directed by the superintendent for them to do that. So,
Thank you. Did I just hear Commissioner Huxley say that you have communicated that there has been improper reporting or false reporting, and also Council Huddle? Is Commissioner Huxley speaking for both of you on that matter?
I said publicly...
Or did I misunderstand?
I did say publicly in the budget meeting that the report that budget included, there was something in the paper that says the budget included money that was to be negotiated for payroll, and that was a false statement.
Yeah, and I agree. The newspaper, if people want to know what's really going on here at the county, reading the newspaper isn't really helpful.
So do you think you can talk to the major news media without being prejudiced after what you've heard today? I mean, not to put you...
I'm a fairly open-minded individual. I think this is also a preventative measure, because I can't anticipate what might happen in the future. You might have some sort of, might have some sort of illegal employee action, embezzlement, a disgruntled employee or something like that. So this will help if something bad happens in the future, that we need to have a one voice or a single voice coming out from the county.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
All right.
I really don't see a problem as long as facts are presented. That's all we want is facts.
Yeah.
Not rhetoric or emotion or any of that, just facts.
It's not my first rodeo, so.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, one other thing we added to the agenda, special meeting procedure for today.
Okay, Madam Chair, Commissioners, at our special meeting today at 1 o'clock, we will basically be appointing 2 individuals to go on the Brookings Port Commission. In your packet for the special meeting and online for individuals to see, the applications are there. So there are some people had resumes, some people had whatever. We need to appoint 2 people that in turn will be sworn in. If the individuals are not here today, they'll have to come up here and visit the clerk to be sworn in. John Jesuit has invited the people to come up, and I'm going to offer a suggested policy to make this a quick, efficient process. So with that, I've invited the people to come up to speak for 3 minutes each, just to introduce themselves and maybe highlight their resume if they want. I basically am not encouraging the commission to have an interview process with these people. If that's the case, because as anytime you go through an interview, you need to make sure you ask the same questions of all the individuals. We would want to coordinate the questions ahead of time, make sure that we're, again, going to ask 3 questions that, for each ones that are the same. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it. I think you guys have seen the applications. I think you can just vote on who, after they speak, who you want to elect for these positions and have them appointed and sworn in. With that, again, in order to not have multiple motions where somebody might motion 2 people in and then somebody will not second in, but they want another person in, I could see this dragging out ad infinitum. My recommendation is that we go with a rank voting system. I've given you a proposed ballot where we listed all 9 individuals. My proposal is that you take your highest choice and you give them, choice number 1 gets 9 points, choice number 2 would get 8 points, choice number 3 would get 7 points, so on and so forth down to your 9th choice, which get 1 point. After you hand those ballots in to either myself or to our corp counsel, we would have another sheet that basically would just highlight the individuals and total points, and the 2 top point getters would be appointed.
And I really do not have a problem with that. I think questions really aren't necessary. It'll drag it out. Not only that, I know of, I think, 3 individuals that are not going to be here. So if one of those were to be appointed or whatever, I don't think it would be fair for those other individuals that had to go through the big question process. We've got a lot of information on their resumes, and I know I've personally gone through all the resumes and kind of put them in order of my preference, and I would suggest that you guys do the same. I may change my mind when one of them gets up, but anyway, that's where I'm at. Commissioner Huxley?
I'd like to add one thing to that, because clearly, if you have not been involved in the Port Commission, you can't in 3 minutes vet anyone. And if you say you can, you're delusional, honestly. I've also, have spent time in trying to vet a little bit more and communicated with the lone commissioner at the port at this point. That's after, of the 5, 4 have either been recalled or resigned in the last few months. And I've asked that individual who has worked with these people, all of them, and had been, involved in the port for decades, for their opinion, because I think as that lone survivor, it speaks volumes for that individual. I've asked that individual, who's Roy Davis, he's the remaining commissioner, for his opinion that basically he has circumstances here that are almost unprecedented. Maybe they are unprecedented in Oregon, where you have a governing body of 5, and there's only one left. But for his opinion, whom he would, in some order, recommend, that feel comfortable, that he could work with, has worked with, that would make it a very compatible versus potentially incompatible when you have a situation like this and commissioners that don't know personally the individuals. I've talked to some, I know some, but I'd like that also, if that's, appears reasonable, to have, I'm presuming he will be here. I've received, several calls from individuals that won't be here because they've expressed that they had prior commitments months ago and they can't change them, and I completely understand, because this meeting wasn't on, and it's still not positive until the votes are certified by the clerk.
Which they
but
are.
This wasn't on.
Yep, actually, just about an hour ago,
So
I just got
until
certification.
this point, we didn't know
Yep.
for sure. So I understand, individuals that had prior commitments that just cannot change them. But I would like to also hear from Roy Davis as far as his.
And I talked to Roy
opinion.
also on this very issue.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good work. My initial thought was perfect, and now I'm backtracking a little bit, because I'm not going to sit here and rate one person as last worst. That it just kind of dawned on me that's what I'd be required to do. So in order to follow through, I'm going to resist that. And I think just simply having 2 candidates that we all 3 vote on, maybe that's the best way to go. I'm going to put that in the form of a request, but I don't want to rate 9 down to 1. I might be overstating it here, but
Well,
What you're saying is you don't want someone to feel bad, is that?
they're all great candidates, and so I'm not in a position.
You could just say, here's my 2 candidates. One gets
We have
9
that
points,
option.
one gets 8, and then you could leave the others blank.
The others blank.
You don't have to go through the rank if you don't want to.
Thank you for that clarification, and that I'm sorry I misunderstood that. That's a relief to know.
Well, and quite frankly, I think I might be doing that also.
Okay.
This is just a quicker way to get to the
The bottom line.
instead of just jigging around on live. So,
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Is everybody okay with what's going to go on then?
yep.
Okay.
We'll reconvene at 1
Well-
o'clock then for. a
Well,
special
actually,
meeting.
we're going to adjourn this session, and then we'll get back for our special
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
So we are now adjourned from our workshop. Thank you for coming.